Hello, hello. Very exciting things happening in Netherfield today. I think you know what I'm talking about. This is going to be an episode jam-packed full of information. I know that because I've actually made notes so that I don't forget to talk about some things because I've already recorded most of the rest of the Netherfield arc, which means this is the only time I have left to give you a bunch of just behind the scenes goodies. More of those goodies and to the most salacious details. Sure, let's go with that. We'll go to my patrons who get extended and bonus episodes. Let's get into it. My name is Ashley Clements, and this is the Look Back Diaries. Is that weird? For anybody else, that is a theme song contribution sent in by Joel Estes. Thank you, Joel. Joel said, I made a theme song for the Look Back Diaries on YouTube. Since it doesn't have one yet, I'm insulted. Joel clearly has a very good one. Since the series is all about looking back, I took the melody from the Lizzie Bennet Diaries theme song and wrote it out backwards. I added the original chords in reverse order, then tweaked a few rhythms to make it land better. Joel, very impressed with you musically, but I think there's something about it being like familiar but backwards. It's like being in the upside down of Lizzie Bennet Diaries. I'll link to Joel's SoundCloud below so you can check that out for yourself. As I am very sure you're aware, we're going to meet Bing Lee today. In fact, the name of the episode is Meeting Bing Lee. But first I thought I would go in more depth on something that I mentioned casually in the last episode, which is that Netherfield is the same bedroom as Lizzie's bedroom, different wall. It's such a known thing for me and everyone in the show that I think I forget how much that surprises people when they first learn about it. In fact, I remember how much it surprised Hank Green when we told him at that dinner in Anaheim when we all first met him, because he had seen the Netherfield footage even though it hadn't aired yet, and he was shocked to learn that it's the same bedroom. And it's a fun part of the magic of filmmaking, right? We can cheat a lot of things in terms of location because we only see what we want you to see, what we point the camera at. But for anyone who was ever in that room, it's just kind of like, duh? Like, duh. I think there was some discussion at some point of trying to find somewhere else to film Netherfield. I mean, it is supposed to be this opulent mansion with a lot of wealth in it, and everyone involved in that show who was in Los Angeles, yeah, all of us, just lived in apartments in LA, and some of them pretty crappy apartments at that. And so none of us had access to a mansion, nor did we really have much budget to go towards renting an expensive location. And ultimately, Katie Most to the rescue again. She said to Jenny Powell, what color do you want a wall of your room? We're doing an accent wall. And she picked purple, which is the color of royalty and therefore appropriate for wealth. And I think when you start nitpicking it, here, let's look at it. Let's look at Netherfield. Fantastic. I couldn't have asked for a better freeze frame. So you can see that it's a purple wall. That's just Jenny Powell's dresser, which is a perfectly fine dresser, appears to be made of wood. Wood costs money, but it doesn't necessarily read as some kind of insanely expensive piece of furniture. It's a very simple dresser. But all of the things behind it, here, will you see my little mouse to use as point, my little laser? These are all touches that Katie Most added. Everything you see, basically, she put this whole bedspread collection together, and none of these are actually expensive things. Lord, my face. But context, we tell you this is expensive and you believe it. We can use techniques and manipulation with the camera to make things other than what they appear. And that's what we did here. Welcome to Netherfield. It's Lizzie's bedroom from a different angle. And if I go back to my gorgeous face, this wall, this white wall here up in the upper left corner, that moves over off screen into the closet. And on the other side of the closet is the door into the room. So that white space behind, that's the wall. It is a 90-degree wall, but we didn't shoot directly at that purple wall because, as Margaret discussed, it looks better when there's more depth on camera. We do lack, of course, the wall, but if we were just pointed directly at a flat purple wall, that would be much less interesting than what we came up with here. We are sitting on a bed here, and the dynamic of that, which is also a little awkward for me as the actor, because the camera and the bed are not at the same angle, which is how we had always shot the show before, suddenly I am seated closer to the camera than anyone else who comes in with me. And if you look, you'll notice that that actually means my head is a little bit bigger than everyone else's head. Look, I actually do have a large head, but that is also perspective. And it also puts me in the difficult position of everyone upstaging me in terms of looking at them. Everyone is upstaging me. And we should have done something about it, and we didn't. I think it's the only time in the series, with maybe a rare exception, but I know we took them everywhere else. Other than VidCon, this is the only time that we didn't sit on the same stools that we always sat on. And I wish that I had a picture of them, but they're stools. You know what stools look like, but chair height stools, not tall bar stools. And the way that they would be set up in Lizzie's room, when I was just solo vlogging, I sat on one stool normally. And when we were prepared for me to be interrupted by someone who would jump in frame and I would move over so that they could sit down next to me, I would straddle the two stools. It wasn't very comfortable. I would sit kind of, imagine you put two stools next to each other and then you tried to put your butt there. It wasn't ideal, but that was how that show was all the time. Two stools, me sitting awkwardly in the middle if necessary, except now we're on the bed, which gives a little bit more, you can see a little bit more bounce if you're looking for things like that. It's just sort of awkward. And there is a door in the room. It's the exact same door that we've used before. When we look to the door, we are looking to the door. We don't have to imagine that. There is sometimes a person standing in said doorway, but we were doing a good bit of imagining, as we continued to do throughout. The exception to the rule about stools will be Darcy, but we won't get there for quite some time. Today is a different romantic leads introduction. What am I doing? I don't know. Let's watch the episode and meet Bingley.
Hello, Internet.
Hello, Lizzie.
Netherfield. I'm being extra careful.
Obviously,
about
we're
how
at
and when I
Netherfield.
record these things because it's one thing if one of my sisters barges in on me recording these things, but it's quite another if the person coming through the door could be Bing.
Oh no.
Darcy. And I know it's
Not
your
Darcy,
birthday,
but
but
probably
keep
Bing.
talking about this guy.
I
We're in
guess
his
I
house.
wonder
We
if
went
people
to see
thought we
Bing
might
Lee.
have seen Darcy at
Well,
Netherfield. That would have been
I
a
wasn't
fair
gonna do this,
expectation, but I knew you wouldn't.
fates have conspired against me. My name is Lizzie Bennett, and you're finally gonna see Bing Lee.
Ooh, it's Bing time! We're all gonna get banged.
So since Jane and I have been living in Netherfield, she's been a little under the weather because she's stuck in the house and I've been busy.
And that's
I
from Pride
encouraged her
Prejudice,
to
right? We
record a
just,
letter to Charlotte
because
if she got bored.
she actually rode in the rain and got sick, and maybe that's an allusion to
Adorable
that.
this happened, and you know what?
The whole
Let's just roll the tape.
letter to Charlotte thing does
Lizzie
seem
is running errands right now, but she said she'd be
odd.
home for dinner.
But you know what?
It's actually
We're in a
not
post-Felicity
back
world.
yet, but
Oh God, you're all too young to get that reference, aren't you?
oh, no, that's not.
How could you be this cute when she's sick? This is the period of time in which in which Laura was gifted. I'll pause and talk about Christopher Sean as Bingley. Look at this gorgeous man. Couldn't honestly have gotten any better casting because he looks like that, but he's genuinely very nice. So he didn't have to pretend to be nice.
Well, that's not good. That's very bad.
Oh. This was the audition sides, as I recall, as well. So we had seen many versions of this scene, and these two are so beautiful and adorable together. We knew, oh God, we knew and we delighted in
Oh my
how
I
much
know,
the
I know
fans were going to
this.
be squeeing. Margaret and
This
I
time
talked a little bit
is
about,
strong.
I think it was this episode in particular, but we were just talking off
Baloney.
camera, and she was saying that
Aren't you
she
afraid
was
that I'm
like,
going
we're
to
just
infect
gonna
your
give them
baloney disease?
the storybook
How
romance.
could I possibly be
Absolutely.
happy
And
on
so,
remaining 70 or 80 years if I knew that I
you know,
was doing
it's not
really
about
well?
Oh,
being
Jesus.
snarky, which so
I'm
much
afraid it's too
of
late.
Lizzie's
I don't
stuff
wanna
is.
cry.
It's just these two very genuine,
That's terrible.
very sincere
It's a bit
characters
cheesy, but it's
being.
not that bad.
No, not that. That you're going to be dead in 80 years.
Shut up. Shut up. It's too cute. It's gross. It's like,
Statistically,
ugh,
men
giving me a
live as long as women do.
cavity, but it's adorable.
News just keeps
It's
getting worse and worse.
adorable. I'm
It's
not
true.
really mad at it.
So, Charlotte, if you're seeing this,
And of course, we
please,
start here a very
for the
important
love of
trend.
God,
Hey,
do
Charlotte.
not come visit. This is a plague house.
We
and Lord
didn't
only
know
knows what
at
will
this
follow you if
point.
you darken our door.
That's very Margaret. Plague house. So that is me,
Run. Save yourself. Tell her, Jane. She's young.
Standing.
She has so much to live for.
in the other part of the room.
I tell Caroline not to hold the soup, man. I'll be down in a minute.
You should go eat.
You should finish your letter to Charlotte.
Yeah, finish
So,
your letter to
what do you
Charlotte.
tell her?
He almost made that sound
Uh-huh.
sexual.
Just that it's really nice here
Mhm.
and that I wish that I was feeling better so that I could enjoy everyone's company.
Well, then we'll just.
And now
have to get you
kiss? No, we're gonna have to wait months.
You think you could improve my
But yeah, it's very like
Hey, this
internet
semester
meme.
seemed to be a
And
bit-
now kiss. They sure look like they want to. Woo!
What do you think?
We think he's adorable. You probably want to hear about Bingley, right? You want to hear about, I mean, you just met Bingley. Do you want to hear about casting Bingley? Let's get into it. As I said, I believe that the sides were the scene you just saw. There may have been a second scene, I don't remember. This is the only time that I was not at the initial auditions. It was the first time we were casting new characters. We cast them in May, and I didn't know yet how much fun it would be. I think I was actually busy the first day, but after that, I never missed another day and always made sure to schedule things around being able to be there, which also means that every person who read for the show walked in and did a chemistry read with me immediately, except for Mary's and Maria's, I think, are the only people who didn't read with me because that was not the chemistry that was important. But I also just loved being there as someone who had only ever been in an audition as the nervous actor trying to get a part. It was fascinating and empowering and just very cool. So I didn't see everyone initially read. They actually read with Margaret. And everyone who read for this show, other than the initial 4 of us in our first auditions, because even in our callbacks we did it this way, did the audition sitting side by side in that very uniquely Lizzie Bennet Diaries way. That was very odd for people who had not done anything like that because it's not commonly done. What we did was weird. And you could always tell who had done their research and just watched an episode of the show because they would know how that was going to operate. They would often say things like, "Oh, it's you." Some people were very thrown, like, I'm reading with Lizzie Bennet." And some people had very, very, very clearly not watched any of the show and had no idea what was going on. I also got to watch audition tapes and voice my own preferences and recommendations. I was not the final say by any means. Many voices were contributing their opinions, and I very much could have been vetoed, but I have excellent taste. And there is no point in this show in which I ever thought the wrong person got cast. Let's talk about Christopher Sean, because he got the part, and he was such a perfect thing because I mean, he really brought all the things, right? Like, total hottie, real beefcake, very muscular man, and genuinely such a nice guy, like, not really too far off from Bing. In fact, part of the reason that he got Laura's vote is because once we were done with the Bing Lees, Laura left and she ran in to Christopher, who was still outside somewhere. And we were in the middle of Hollywood. It was the middle of the day. No one was actually going to die, but it's not like the safest place in the world. And he said, just let me walk you to your car, just make sure you're safe. And she texted us and said he walked me to my car to make sure I was safe. He is Bingley, he gets my vote. So all the cuteness that you're seeing in this, all the like very good chemistry, is two very cute people having very good chemistry. And the final detail from my notes is that this is the shoot day in which I really figured out how to do the show in a way that made the rest of the show much, much, much easier to do. I had signed with a new manager, and when I was putting together a reel, she thought that the jump cuts in the show looked weird, and she asked if I could record some of the show as a monologue without cuts in it. And so I talked to Bernie and said, could we film it that way? And then, you know, you can still put the jump cuts in. And he said, yeah, sure. Like, you just need to memorize it like a monologue. And so I did. I picked a few of the Netherfield arc episodes to really memorize the beginning like a monologue, as opposed to what I had formerly done was really focus on memorizing the scenes, because we would try not to put jump cuts in the scenes, and I didn't really worry about memorizing the stuff at the top because there was so much to memorize, and I knew that I could pull my lines off the music stand and put in those jump cuts. As a consequence of this, I spent way more time with the scripts, and I just memorized all of it much better. And the shooting day was so much easier, so much faster, so much less exhausting. Like, it changed everything, and we were all like, wow, this makes such a difference. And then, of course, Bernie was like, well, yeah, so, you know, now you just have to, like, memorize the whole thing. Like, now we know that, like, that makes this all so much easier, and you'll do that from now on. Which, again, I repeat, was usually in the vicinity of 50 to 60 pages that I would get 2 days in advance. But then my process became that we would, well, I have to go farther back than that. So about a week and a half before our shoot, Bernie would send me everyone's first-ish draft of the script. We would go through the whole script over Skype. Yes, it was 2012. And I would read Lizzie, and he would read all the other characters, and I would give a ton of notes about pieces of dialogue that stuck in my mouth or things that didn't quite feel true to Lizzie to me, and suggestions about how to change it. And then he would take all of those notes and incorporate them into everyone's episodes, and we would get together for in-person rehearsals the Wednesday before a Saturday shoot. We always shot on Saturdays. We pretty much always rehearsed the Wednesday before. That would be Bernie and Margaret and whichever actors were in the episodes that we were filming. They were always in Bernie's apartment, very casual. And then we would discover new things. That was the first time that any other cast members had the opportunity to give input. And we would just kind of roughly block them out and figure out what needed to be changed. Margaret would then go incorporate those. And usually by end of day Wednesday or early on Thursday, I would get a final script that I could start to memorize. I typically spent Thursday panicking, going, I should be memorizing this, and I'm not memorizing this. I need to be memorizing this. And by like the end of Thursday, I would usually have been able to kind of work on 1 or 2 episodes. Then with no more time left to panic, spend all day Friday just going over my scripts. Absolutely just going over my scripts, which also meant, of course, that in my schedule I needed to make sure that I didn't have anything else that I needed to be doing that day, even though I wasn't being paid for that day, or rehearsals or anything other than shoot days, because I needed to make all of those words go into brain. And that meant reading my scripts and pacing around. I would print my scripts because I like to have them on paper, but I was also just printing those at home. And all of that routine was really kind of finalized and established on this, the 4th shoot day, when I figured out how much easier my life was and everyone's life was when I just committed to memorizing 60 pages of dialogue after spending 1 or 2 days with the script. I mean, I don't know why it didn't occur to me from the beginning, but at any rate, it was a huge turning point. And patrons, I found those unedited opening monologues, and they're coming your way as a bonus. I told you I had notes. Let's take a look at the comments. Whew, this is long. My heart cannot handle the cuteness that is Bingley and Jane. The chemistry is so real, isn't it? God, they're cute. Oof. That was read by Zoe. Jean Lucia says, Charlotte, if you're reading this, for the love of God, do not come visit. This is a plague cast, and Lord only knows what will befall you if you darken our door. How did quarantine actually make that line funnier? Woof. That's the best line delivery ever. This couldn't have aged better. Best version of Bingley, hands down. A lot of you have mentioned that you rewatched the show during quarantine. Understandable. I'm glad we could be there for you in a very trying time. Emily Serrano says, I made the correct choice of marathoning LBD instead of an essay. I mean, I don't know how your grade went. If you're watching, let us know. Marina Vieira Souza says, bisexually confused about which Lee sibling is hotter. Very fair. Shema says, this is disgustingly cute. I agree. It's pretty gross. Jess Peterson, oh, Jane, I'm afraid I've already got it. Me explodes. Betty Jojo Harper says, side note, I super appreciate how they put in an interracial couple but didn't make it a huge deal. My fiance is Indian from India, and I think representation is important, but it doesn't need to be a theme, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think that is something that the Lizzie Bennet Diaries did well. Alex says, I actually said to myself, this is the most adorable relationship I've ever seen. Honestly, actually, can you imagine if you were friends with a couple like this and they were that cute every time you were together? Like, you'd actually hate them when I'm kidding. I don't dislike love. I don't know if I am kidding though. That does seem actually like it would be really excessive to do in front of your friends. Like, maybe don't send that letter to Charlotte. Just post it on the internet. And finally, I told you I had notes. After this episode is when the first Lydia Bennet spin-off episode is introduced, and many of you have asked in the comments if I'm going to do a rewatch of them, and the answer is no. I'm not going to rewatch and comment on them because I had nothing to do with making them. I have no additional information. I do agree that they are vital viewing to fully take in the story. If you watch the original show and never watched the spin-offs, oh boy, are you in for a treat. So what I am going to do is always link below to the corresponding episode of the Lydia Bennet that you should absolutely watch if you're doing a rewatch in order. But this show is about my memories, and so I will be focusing on me. Me! I don't know what that was. See you next time.